Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Camilla Bullock and I am absolutely delighted to welcome all of you to our hot topic briefing, The Year Ahead 2024. We had an intro there and might not have come across the music that's setting the scene that this will be a very exciting year. And with me on the line today to give their predictions, I have some of our advisory board and also some of our ambassadors. Crucial parts of our organization and the work we are doing together with the industry to moving the dial in payments when we're working towards harmonization, interoperability, a level playing field, innovation for all, with a vision of improving lives everywhere through payments. So with me today, I have May Leahy, who is our Chief Information Officer at Australia Payments Plus, and she is our chair of the advisory board. She's based in Australia. I have Anthony Morris, who is our ambassador. He's based in Hong Kong. Carrie Swain, she's a senior advisor, global affairs and sustainability strategies and head of APAC public policy at Ant Group. We have Mika von Hartmann. He's an ambassador in Thailand. And we have Nigel Lee, who is a chief customer officer at Ingenico and on our advisory board. Last but not least, Marianne Francis. She's an executive advisor and global payments strategic advisor. She was previously at IBM and she is at our advisory board. You will hear from them very, very soon. But first, 2023 was a year we had some headwind in the industry or the economy on whole. It was a microenvironment with high inflation rates and high interest rates. And we also saw continued unrest and geopolitical instability, as well as increased fraud and cyber attacks. So it was a lot of challenges, but also we saw that our industry is very resilient, and we saw increased collaboration in the value chain, vertical and horizontal, but also between public and private sector, something that has come to be so important to move the dial and increase innovation in payments. And we also see continued digitalization and innovation across the sector. So it was a good year, even if we had some headwind. But what will happen in 2024? That's what we're here to talk about today. But in the EPA, I just wanted to show you a few numbers of what we achieved and what we did last year. So we can just share that slide. Because we had the growth in the membership, and we also launched the APAC Excellence in Payments Award, which was a great success and that you will see returning this year. We did submissions across the region, 12 of them, and we're also very proud and grateful for the seats that we had at the FSB task force for infrastructure, the PI task force, and also for legal, regulatory and supervisory work. So you can read the numbers there, growth in social media, and we had closer to 350,000 impressions on LinkedIn. But before we dive into the predictions of today, we wanted to ask you two questions. So this is to hear a little bit about what you think will happen and the developments you think we will see. So what do you think will be the payments trends to look out for in 2024 in APAC? So you can pick top three. Further adoption of tap to pay and digital wallets, stabilization, regulation, expansion of buy now, pay later, scan-free checkouts, mobile points of sale, great collaboration between finance and technology, cross-border instant payments, increase in QR code payments, increasing use of DLT, increasing use of biometric in payments. This is actually one of my favorites. I would vote for that one. Increased use of embedded payments, generative AI in payments, definitely the buzzword of last year, and the rise of Web3 or CBDC gain momentum, the rise of SaaS or increased adoption of API technology. It was a lot of suggestion, but it's a lot of things we're talking about all the time. So wanted to hear from you. So I is going to give you a little bit of time to vote there. Neve, I think you see better when you see the most of the numbers has come in. Good. It's still changing a bit. Okay, I think I can see so far increase using QR code payments is leading the race, I think. So maybe we're as close. I think I'm influencing the answers if I'm talking, so maybe I should be quiet. Good. Let's end this poll and just share the results quickly. Good. So we can see continuously increase focus on cross-border instant payments. It's very aligned with our agenda and events and discussion that we has aligned for the community in the first half of the year, and I'm sure it will continue into the second half of the year, when specifically the project from FSB is increasing momentum with more task force and more actually hands-on opportunities and projects to get involved. And then we also have the increase in QR code payments, something we also have on our agenda to come up soon, which is the follow-up from the APAC FinTech Payments Forum that we hosted in November with 14 FinTech Association. The report is due out very soon, and then you will see the follow-up event on that. As you know from before, we like running an event and then really is taking on what's happening in the event and build on that. I think that we then are ready to dive into the predictions. And the first one to hear from is May Lam, the chair of the EPA Advisory Board. May, please, can we have your predictions for the year?
Sure, thank you, Camilla. So I probably would break down into three things. The first is that kind of continue the theme that you mentioned in terms of what we have seen in 2023, because a lot of innovation in the market, but also the threats and the digital crime is also increasing. So I think one of the first prediction is that there will be more innovation to come to the market to help to protect and prevent fraud and scams. So first, in relation to that would be around how do we responsible use of the data. How the data, the cycle of data seen as an asset, the privacy law, the regulations perspective will come to play more. The second part is that the adoption of using the digital identity that's as part of the payment flow will be embedded to it, and possibly that embedded into the different experiences and journey as well. And the third thing around that is that the use of tokenization. As what we have seen in the last probably 2 years, the tokenized or the digital twin that has been quite large in terms of the economy of the tokenized ID. The data is quite large. So we will see more consolidation and regulation on top of that. The second trend that I'm predicting for the year ahead is around the cross-border payments API. We see more movement in terms of harmonization, but not just on the technical perspective. It's about how to increase the interoperability. So and leveraging the different governing body. So we will see more policymakers come to collaborate on that front. And then ultimately, I think the first goal to achieve from the G20 perspective will be how collectively we can lower the cost of payment for cross-border. The third one that will be like quite rounded, and I can see the list of the polling, is that what other emerging technologies really come to play in 2024. I think in the last 2 years, we have seen a lot of experiments in terms of DLT, Web3, Gen AI, etc. But I think this year will be really focused. So for example, on the DLT, the prediction is not about cryptocurrency, but it's a digital asset. But it's on the exchange and the settlement. So we'll see more movement from the wholesale perspective, not on the retail. And so very specific on that. And then the second one is that the leverage of AI, generative AI, but is also more or so of kind of a first prediction is to use in the market. How do we prevent fraud and scam perspective that can not commercialize? I think that as an industry, we all feel the duty how to protect our end customer and consumer. And the third one that we'll be seeing is quantum safe. So particularly mentioned the safe is not the quantum computing and technology of having a new use case or business model, but is it what is right now we have to start at, so that when quantum or the YQK happen by 2030, we are safe in terms of from the payment perspective. We all have a duty to play. So that's my 3 predictions.
Fantastic, thank you. And I'm pleased to hear your prediction, and also that we're aligned with our thinking of our agenda, which might not be a surprise as you're also influencing our agenda. I think one to lift out is definitely this around the privacy, because it goes into all those different topics. And I think that we will talk more about that, the definition of privacy, because when we're using AI and all this new technology, it just still goes down to what is privacy, how can we use the underlying data. So thank you very much for those, and we're looking forward to work on those topics in the months to come. So that was May. So now we're going to hear from Anthony Morris in Hong Kong. Anthony, could you please come online and share your predictions?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And yeah, thanks very much for having me here. And I'm probably going to build on May's and then maybe add one extra. So building on May's, actually maybe starting off with fraud, which also linked with May's Gen AI point. Just a couple of things that have appeared in the, one that's appeared in the last couple of days in Hong Kong, which was a deep fake video call, which simulated a CFO instructing somebody at a multinational in Hong Kong to then transfer close to 25 million US dollars. So they literally got on a Zoom call like this. The deep fake, they obviously set it up, and that was enough to convince this person to do the transfer. So actually, very much to your point, May, we're going to see Gen AI far more as a threat at the beginning, and then need to use technology to combat it. Just on fraud, I mean, just another piece of information that I got from a conference recently. Deep fake, if we call them deep fake banking apps, are appearing. So literally complete copies of banking, and I assume payment apps as well at some stage. Which, if you allow side loading, which Android does, basically you're downloading a Trojan. And obviously this becomes more relevant now. The EU are opening up iOS to side loading. They'll be mandating that. So yeah, I think the technology innovation of fraudsters will just keep going because the economic impact's so big. Now switching, cross-border, I'd probably add on top of what May said on cross-border to really focus on, especially in Asia, QR. We're seeing and actually I think there's quite a battle going on between QR and QR, which is actually tends to be national, tends to be, it's built on the faster payments infrastructure, and we're seeing enormous rises, especially India, but we're actually seeing them all around the region. And there's quite a tension with the card scheme-based model, maybe contactless, and obviously the card schemes have the a standard for QR codes. But I think some of the things schemes bring, which is really good handling of disputes, really good handling of interoperability, is what's currently lacking in the cross-border QR space, even if they are using the EMV standard, which not everybody is. And particularly there is a gap where, how do we handle a dispute on a cross-border QR, or even a domestic one, frankly? It doesn't have that level of maturity that the schemes have developed over decades. Then moving on to my next theme, which is really around the complexity for merchants. So as all of these new payments get added and become preferences, you know, what was a relatively, and obviously this is Nigel's world, but what was relatively a simple, not simple, but was relatively small number of variants suddenly is expanding, particularly online, because your customers are in many countries and they're going to have their preferred method. So what we are seeing is an increasing rise of merchant-centric payment orchestration, for want of a better expression. So these are platforms that are completely focused in making life much, much easier for merchants, handling multiple payment flows. And actually CBA's Powerboard is a good example of that, which was launched, I think, just before Christmas, I think. And my last one, slightly different to Maze this time, although it does pick up what, actually, no, it actually complements Maze again, because she mentioned wholesale digital assets probably being the key area, which we'd certainly agree. And what we're seeing is regulated stable coins. So whether it's in Hong Kong, UK, Europe, we're actually seeing, and we're involved in here commenting on the regulations for the Hong Kong ones, which are actually likely to be US dollar, is probably going to be a more popular one. But personally, you know, my view is these are going to be very attractive as digital settlement assets. So once they're well regulated, digital settlement assets will be needed as we see more activity appear on exchanges and tokenization of real world assets. And therefore, I think one thing we will definitely see this year is the emergence of fully regulated and properly backed stable coins. So that's me. Back to our MC Camilla.
Excellent. Thank you, Anthony. You're calling out many interesting topics there. Something that comes to mind when we're talking about this, the technology development is, I was on a call yesterday, talked about our Quantum Safe project that we're launching soon. And in the same time, we talked about if we potentially should be involved in a conference around quantum commercialization. So all this technology development always have the two different sides to it. So it's interesting what you're saying, and also that you're bringing on this new world of opportunities to serve our merchants and the pressure from end consumers to want to have seamless payments. So thank you very much for that. One more thing to call out probably on stable coins is that some of you on the line might know that we're working with the APFF, the Asia Pacific Financial Forum, and the APEC finance ministers, and their call for guidelines this year was around stable coins. So things will do that. But Anthony, thank you very much for calling in from Hong Kong. You always are a depth of intel and what's going on in the market. So let's move over to Singapore and Kerry Swain. Kerry. She's dropped off for a second, so let's wait. Do we have Mika on the line? Mika is dialing in from Thailand, one of our newest ambassadors. So thank you very much, Mika. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, and nice to meet you all. So what I wanted to give today is a perspective of partly is what I'm seeing in the region and globally, and then partly is what is basically Thailand specific, what's happening right now. The first thing that I see happening right now is the realignment of, I would say, payment ownership or payment power, which is driven by governments and central banks. Now, part of that is obviously due to trade conflicts and geopolitics that is happening, and also obviously the Russian war against Ukraine has driven a lot of changes in that side. Now, because of the sanctions that have come, many national governments and central banks want to move away from being under the control of, let's say, the dominant payment networks like SWIFT, the card networks, Visa, MasterCard, and so forth. And so we see a trend on that side. What are the trends that I'm seeing right now? Obviously, with the real-time payments cross-border network payment, where we have the Southeast Asian or ASEAN payment networks that has already been established, where 6 to 7 countries can now transact cross-border with QR code. Basically, it's account-to-account payments on the back end. So we see that is a move away from the card networks. And we see, like, obviously, the Russians, they're developing their own card network, which is called MirCard. Actually, they developed it in 2014 already when they, first attacked Crimea. And they're also expanding, regionally, globally. Obviously, there's difficulties in, merchants, fund settlement for that. But I think they have found ways to do that. We also see the Chinese trying to, have, like another option. Instead of going through SWIFT, they have their own network. And right now, they're also trying to push the wholesale CBDC scheme, which Thailand also is part of that, Hong Kong is part of that, and UAE is part of that. And that has been quite successful. So what I see is that in the future, there should be a push to move away from the existing players in the the payments, or let's say the messaging network. I mean, SWIFT is just a messaging network anyway. So there's been a move away from that to a lower cost. Plus, not being under the control of, sorry to say, of the US. I mean, the US is under the control of the US. SWIFT is under the control of the US. So a lot of these countries are now saying that, hey, why do we need to transact through these players? Why do they need to see our transactions? And that's something that we're seeing right now is driven by governments and central banks, especially in Southeast Asia, ASEAN, and also India. UPI has been very successful in that, and now UPI is going global. I mean, they're going to connect with Thailand probably, I think, after mid-year this year, to enable Indians to come and transact either through funds transfer or maybe even merchant payments also here. Also, they're going to Europe and other places. So we see that happening in the region, especially in Thailand. We see it very clearly. The Thai government itself is trying to, drive the PromptPay network, which is a real-time payment system, which also we have just, accepting from other countries. I'll give you some figures right now, is that as of December 2013, on the cross-border inbound into Thailand, 120 million baht was transacted, and it was a year-on-year growth of 440%. So what we see is regional players, participating. Especially number one was Malaysia, second was Indonesia, and then Hong Kong. So that's something that I see is a trend, that this realignment of the payments, ownership and the power that governments have over or control over their own payments, over their own money, actually, Plus, another one that I see that the central banks are trying to do is trying to push down or lower the cost for merchants and customers. And this is very clearly seen in the current existing real-time payments schemes that they are launched all over Asia, like in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and other countries, where basically it's zero, right? But I don't think it will last with zero. The MDR, the merchant discount rate, I don't think it will be zero forever. I think there will be some in the future. There'll be some discussion about some additional cost to the merchants. But for the customer, they're also lowering the cost, because transacting through these, it's cheaper than using a credit card. And in ASEAN, most people are quite price sensitive. When I talked with a few people about that, you can now use your banking app in Thailand and transact in Singapore at a lower FX rate. Their eyes opened up. They never knew about it, and they said, "Yeah, I'm going to use it for sure." And that's the transaction volume that is growing right now. We see that. Plus, we also see, what I see is a competition to compete with the existing card networks. So these are the digital wallet networks that are coming up. For us ourselves, we're providing Alipay as Alipay Plus as a service to our merchants, and we see that there's a fair amount of uptake in people using that service. And that service of Alipay network is going to go global. It's already partly global. And so that is something that I see that is a trend that is coming up, especially in the Asian region, not in the US, because the US is still so card-centric. but the customers here in Asia, they can't qualify for a credit card, but they can qualify to open a digital wallet very easily. And now the services that are provided around that, let's say, super app, wallet is, like in Thailand, it's exactly the same as Alipay or WeChat, not different at all. And we see the Asian customers, number one, we have inbound for us. We have Touch and Go from Malaysia. Second, we have Alipay Hong Kong. Third, we have Kakao Pay from South Korea. And the transaction volume is quite interesting. So I think that is a trend that we're seeing in the Asian for the younger generation, that maybe they're not going to go for a credit card, but they'll go for a digital wallet very easily. Plus, the digital wallets will provide on top similar to credit card services. So they'll give loans, they'll give BNPL, etc., also. The final one that I wanted to discuss is that banks in ASEAN are starting to give back some control to the customer. Before, it was the banks basically controlled everything, and you had no access rights. You weren't able to access your data, or actually able to share your own data to another bank. And that's happening all over Asia right now. Like in Thailand, for example, they are planning to enable customers to transfer from one bank to another bank by just using their own data. They don't need to go apply, key in any forms, anything, but make it that they actually can own their own data and move from bank to bank. And also from, credit card service provider or loan service provider, very easily. So this is something that is coming here in Thailand. And we see that currently, when tourism now is, booming right now, we see the cross-border payment scheme, it's really picking up right now very nicely. Not yet back to pre-COVID, but the trend is going there. So that's about it, what I wanted to share. There was some other discussions in the group, which is very similar to what I wanted to discuss, so I won't talk about them. That's my time's up. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mika. So I hear a prediction of a change of the playing field, who the participants are that are active in different markets, and also that is driven by a different mix of payments types. So we see a bit more of the wallets and the account-to-account payments or pay with bank. So it sounds very interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Very much last year, it differs what we saw in conversation. If I just look at who was in the room, we saw many more FX providers being in the room, which talks to that trend of actually local settlement or in local currency. So thank you, Mika. We're looking forward to have you involved in those discussions over the next couple of months. I think we have some missing. Maybe they are writing the prediction and looking into the crystal balls, because we don't have Marianne Francis on the call. She's also dialing in from US, so that might be why. But we have Nigel Lee, who's based in Singapore. So Nigel, could we please hear your prediction?
Hey, hi there, Camilla, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining as well. So super interesting spread of predictions from everybody, and I think so. For those of you who know me, I come from a slightly different perspective. Given that particularly now I'm running a company that deals right with merchants on a regular basis. And so I'm going to talk about that space, because that's the space I see most of the time and most of the change. And I've got, I think, three things that matter the most. I think that are happening and that I predict we'll start to see lots of noise around. So I'll start with the one that resonates with probably at least two of us on the panel today, and that's the increasing use of AI. And I think that will happen. This year we'll see AI everywhere. We already do. I was at the National Retail Federation event in New York recently, and everything was AI. If you were there and you didn't have AI on your stand, you clearly didn't exist. But I think specifically AI is going to be, this year we'll see it impacting in a few places. One is fraud, and I agree with both Anthony and with May that it's going to have an important part to play in that, based on big data, based on the way in which we're going to see increasing transaction models driven by AI around the fraud space. I think also, though, we'll start to see it increasingly in the servicing space and in the loyalty space. And I think we'll begin to see both of those occur, both in terms of servicing and loyalty for consumers, but also in terms of servicing and loyalty in the merchant space too. So that's an area that I think we'll see AI talked about frequently. The second thing that I know it's a topic that everybody rolls their eyes at, but I think it links to one of the other topics that May spoke about, and it is that we'll see much more tangible activity in omnichannel this year. And what do I mean by that? Well, I was listening to some insight that was provided by one of the participants we had at a recent event, where they spoke about the fact that no matter what we think, it is still the case that 70 to 75% of payments still occur in an offline space. And so what that means, though, is that increasingly the form factor in offline and the way offline is happening is getting much richer. And the journeys for consumers are getting much more complicated. And so what we are going to increasingly see, I think, through this year, particularly with big retailers in many of the markets, developed and developing, is an increasing push towards real consumer journeys that are omnichannel. And I think tokenization plays into that strongly. And I think we'll see an increasing component of that flow happening. And you're seeing some of that happen already certainly in the developed economies in Europe and in the US. You're seeing a lot of players who are today gateway players, who are players who started their life in the e-commerce space, whether it's the Adyen's of this world, the Stripes, the Squares, even the Shopifys, all realizing that if they're going to have this next part of their journey of growth happen, they're going to have to get a shot at this 70 to 75% of in-store retail that's happening. And therefore, their competency is in the online space, their linkage is through omnichannel to that offline space. And so I think we're going to see much more of that through this year, and we're already seeing those players heavily invest. The final thing I think is also about access. It's not on our list here, but I'm hearing it absolutely everywhere. And it is the desire to move towards soft POS. So tap on phone as opposed to simply using traditional payment devices. We're seeing it through the major schemas, of course, first, because that's where the certifications have happened. But increasingly, I think that's going to be the discussion for all manner of payment mechanisms that are occurring. And so I think those for me are three key things. They're all wrapped around the consumer experience in the merchant space, not necessarily at the back end. But I think we're going to see each of those see an uptick in 2024 in almost all geographies.
Fantastic, thank you. I have a question, but we have a question online also. So this is from one of our participants. Do you have any stats on growth of mPOC and SPOC as percentages of total acceptance, or even year-on-year stats on numbers of mPOC and SPOC acceptance channels? Also, any views around data-driven payments with SKU data, not just PAN and expiry and so on? Can you take a question on the fly, Nigel? Do you have any of those things as off the cuff?
You know, I can tell you that I don't. And I can tell you I don't because what I see through what's happening with all the clients that I speak to is that many of them are trialing mPOC and SPOC. Many of them are trialing tap to phone. The volume of payments they're seeing, so in countries like Spain, for example, and some other countries, some of our clients are telling us they've been surprised by the use cases that are happening. They're use cases they didn't necessarily think would occur. Things like queue breaking solutions, things like insurance solutions for acceptance of payments for people knocking on doors. So very interesting use cases that haven't yet been trialed, I think. The traditional use case assumption around soft POS is for micro merchants, but in fact, actually, that's what I've been seeing in all the geographies is that that's not the use case that most people believe are actually going to drive the adoption of this, and there's going to be a complementary adoption to the adoption of physical terminals. So it's interesting. It's very early days. but every single client in every single geography that I've spoken to is wanting to be able to do something in the space. Now, in terms of other data, so it's not clear yet how they're going to use other data in order to drive payments in that category. And from the question, I'm not quite clear what Jerome is thinking about here.
Maybe a comment, just a thought, because I think it links to your which I thought was an excellent point on the offline to online. So sorry, online to offline. That really started with Ali in the mainland a long time ago, 5-6 years ago, and actually bringing, as you were describing, bringing the phone form factor to the offline environment. Suddenly, doing it properly, omni-channel is suddenly where that SKU data can be involved. Yeah, so I know there's people looking at it here, but I think if we go to the mainland, that's the time it can be involved, because you're two powerful devices linked together. So I'm wondering if that might be where they're heading.
Yeah, it could be possible, Anthony. I think also what I'm beginning to see is that as you're able to capture information through the digital approach. So I've seen many, for example, e-receipting solutions that capture the information at SKU level and are able to do that as the data comes through from the printer. And that's allowing for other potential solutions there around loyalty and stronger marketing. So there are some, but that relies on quite a lot of technology in the ECR space to suddenly become more open, which in many cases it's not. So there's quite a lot that has to happen in the ecosystem, which is today fairly fragmented, in order to make some of that really valuable.
Good. Excellent. Thank you for that discussion. And it ties in. We actually issued a report yesterday from a roundtable discussion on omni-channel experience in payments. And one thing that I'm thinking and pondering a lot, and it would probably my prediction, is that we're going to have more biometrics discussion and biometrics at point of sale, and what does it mean and what could that enable in that customer journey. So that's something that I think will be tied in both to this around digital identity, but also in how we're following a customer in the value chain. Good. So thank you very much, Nigel. Going to move on to the point where we're going to let you know who was the Sage of the Year last year. This is the 4th year in a row that we're sharing the Sage of the Year, and what we do. And I had lots of questions about how is this actually done. And we're not going to give the recipe for how we are choosing the Sage of the Year, because it's both what we see people are talking about, but mostly and mainly is what we see being done. So in the way you give of the prediction of what's going to happen, and then we look at what is actually being implemented and talked about. So this year's Sage of the Year has defied expectation in an era dominated by predictive AI and the buzz surrounding ChatGPT. Our Sage chose to focus on the practical and impactful trends that are reshaping our industry's landscape. Our Sage did not succumb to the allure of the most hyped words of 2023. Instead, he spotted what I would say was he spotted one of the most hyped words in 2021 and 2022. So he looked at the trend that is transforming how our industry operates and what the payments industry provides that assists our customers to strengthen the front end of user experience, deepen customer relationships, and establish new revenue streams. So he talked about embedded finance and open API adoption in a variety of different scenarios that he saw. And he also predicted the mass adoption of real-time payments and the formation of bilateral linkages in domestic payment system. Additionally, our SAGE emphasized the heightened focus on combating fraud and scam and the use of AI to maintain a competitive edge. In a world where technology is advancing rapidly, staying ahead of the curve in terms of security is paramount, and our SAGE recognize this. So we're going to congratulate the SAGE of the year for 2020, or the prediction from 2023 for 2024, which was Canv Pandit from IS. So I don't know if we have that emoji and everybody wants to hit the emoji for Canv. So well done, Canv. I'm looking forward to this call next year when we're going to see who of the panelists actually got it right. But in the meantime, dear audience, all panelists normally gets a lot of the things right. So I would act on the wise words that have been spoken today. I think this is mostly, we wanted to ask you two things before we end this call. We'll share the recording later on. If you have a topic that you would like to see on our webinars, our hot topic briefings and our recordings for this year, please pop them in the chat or share them later on. And I also think I had a slide prepared of the events that's coming up. In case you are in location and would like to get involved, let us know. We will be in Singapore on the 22nd of September. No. of February, and after that we will be in India for the FinTech Festival, which is on the 6th to 8th of March. In general, you will see a lot of focus on India this year because it was definitely something that we saw was a focus on last year, and innovation coming out of India and continues to do so. So we see a lot of partnerships and inspiration. So I think with that, I would like to say thank you to all the panelists and also thank you to the audience who dialed in. We couldn't do what we do without you, so stay tuned and we'll see you soon.